the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Talking Catholic. Here it's Marianela Nunez with Mike Walsh. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Marianela. How are you?
I am well. It's summertime, so it's always exciting.
I know. I was walking outside today and thinking, at least it's a proper June day today, which I can go for.
Look at that, proper June day.
Actually, and we're going to be talking about schools today, and we're having the annual State of the South Jersey Catholic Schools from our superintendent. But we just finished graduation week for the 7, 9, 6, I can't remember how many, five high schools and 3 independent high schools in South Jersey. And it was a great experience. I made it to 2 graduations, one very late, I had to cover for somebody, and one the entire time, and you made it to one, right?
Yes, I did. I went to Camden Catholic, and it was a great experience. It's always exciting to see the graduations, isn't it?
It really is. I have a blast doing it. I was at Paul VI for the entire ceremony, and then I caught the tail end of Holy Spirit High School down the shore, which is always fun because theirs ends on the beach. Which
cool.
It's hard not to appreciate. I made it for the beach, but the Paul VI one was really nice. It was unfortunate. It was supposed to be held outdoors, and they had a storm roll through, so it had to come in. But it was very nice. And to your point, yes, it is such a joyful experience.
Yeah, it's kind of like I was talking to someone who mentioned it's kind of like going to a wedding. Everybody's happy, everybody's smiling, and it's a good kind of like transition for the kids. They're excited, and some of them even fearful of what's to come.
Yeah, and
kind of like seeing their faces of realizing that high school is over and is now into more of a adulthood life. And what do you do after that?
Yeah, I think Bishop Sullivan sort of made that part of his homily as well.
What a great homily.
Yeah, he's, listen, you can say what you will about Bishop Sullivan. I'm sure there's lots of people who say lots of things. When it comes down to being a homilist, he's definitely one of the top 5 that I've ever been there. Every single time, and I know because he spends a lot of time focused on his homilies. He spends a lot of time on his written columns as well for the newspaper. And sure, there are times we'd like them to come in a lot sooner, but they are always very touching when he does them, and he always has a very strong message. And this one, he was really challenging the. He gives sort of a version of the same one at each of the graduations, so each of the graduates has a feel for what the bishop has said. And this one, he really challenged the graduates to embrace what they've learned in their Catholic school career and make sure that they take it with them into wherever they're going next, whether it's college life or even after college into something else in the military for the guys that are going or guys and girls who are going in the military. But it was a powerful message, and I believe it's going to be in the next edition of the Catholic Star Herald.
It was, and I think it was like a very strong message for parents, and kind of like a shout out to all of those who send their kids to our Catholic high schools and make the sacrifice. And, one of the things he said was like, I'm very aware of the sacrifice, but we are also very aware of how good this is for your children and what a difference it can make. And it made me feel really good to hear him talk about the benefit of a we give to the soul. Mm-hmm. And, how many of the classmates of this year may not have what they have. They have God as, part of their career life in mm-hmm. high school, and now as, something that they will carry throughout their whole life. And that was really powerful.
Yeah, I agree. He noted the fact that we're in difficult times, as we've been in for a couple of years now, but he was specifically referencing a lot of the violence that we've seen on city streets and in rural areas, and how the absence of a strong soul, maybe, I guess, in the people who were committing these atrocities, and that that's one of the things that the graduates need to understand, is that's what they've been gifted going to a Catholic school is nourishment for their soul, and that's something that can't be replaced anyplace else.
Exactly. When the little deaths of life come, then we have God to lead us and give us life. So that's beautiful. Bishop, good job.
Yeah, he's on the ball with that stuff. You can tell he was inspired by. He was very specific to it. He was talking about both Buffalo and Uvalde and what happened there, and how we can't simply rely on society to take care of things. That we do need to have a connection to something greater. In our case, Jesus, God, the Creator, our faith, Holy Spirit, Mary.
Yeah,
anybody who's out there to give us a hand, it's important, and that's something that no other scholastic institution other than a Catholic institution can provide. So, it was a great homily. I don't know what of it will make it into the Catholic Star Herald, the column he's writing for the Catholic Star Herald this weekend, but I can assure you it'll be worth your time to read it for our listeners when you get a chance, or for that matter. Most, if not all, of the 5 diocesan high schools had their graduations live streamed.
Exactly.
So you can always check it out and hear it right out of the horse's mouth if you really want to.
Check it out. It'll be worth your time.
It really will. So today we have one of my favorite podcasts of the year where we get to invite my colleague, your boss, onto the podcast to have a chit chat with him. So who do we have with us today?
So we have with us the Secretary of Catholic Education and the Superintendent of the Office of Catholic Schools for the Diocese of Camden, Dr. William Watson. Welcome.
Thanks, Marianela. Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here.
Oh, great to have you. We so rarely get to refer to you as William. The entire time I've known you, you've only been Bill to me.
Yeah, it's very formal. Yeah, that's when you're trying to be formal. You use William, and or when I was a kid, when I was in trouble.
Exactly.
But the full name got pulled out when I was in trouble. So, yeah.
Just so that right after this, we'll be going back to Bill.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. So, Bill, you had we were talking about the graduations. You had the benefit of being at every single one of them for the 5 diocesan high schools, right?
Yes, I was at all 5, and they were. It's really cool how the graduations encapsulate some of the flavor of each one of the schools.
Yeah,
they're all a little different. They they're graduations, right? And the baccalaureate mass is a mass, right? So they all kind of follow the same overall pattern, but they do things a little bit differently, And a few of them have a bagpiper at the beginning of the to lead before the graduates come in. There's the bagpipes, and that's their tradition that they've been doing in some cases for 100 years, and that's really cool. And of course, hearing all the different speeches, the student welcomes and the valedictory speech and the salutatorian speech, and again, they most of the times those speeches hit on similar themes because we were talking about the graduation, the high school, Catholic high school experience, but they all take a little different flavor. One, for example, had the young man who was the valedictorian was also a musician, and so there was this motif of references to music and references to the different notes that the kids played and how they all had their own composition and that sort of thing. So it was always neat when the speakers kind of make it their own and their own high school experience.
Yeah.
So that's always it's just neat to be at all of them. And so, sometimes people ask me, they kind of like, oh my gosh, how many more do you have left? And I don't really look at it that way. It's not, like Marianela said, it's like going to a wedding, like who gets tired of going to weddings?
Yeah.
It's just a celebration, and everybody's happy.
Mike's face.
What I was thinking? I was thinking about how many wedding presents would I want to buy. But I hear what you're saying.
Well, yeah, good
that
point.
Aside, yes,
yeah.
I'm on board with what you're saying. But and that's true because that is one of my favorite parts of any graduation is the joy that's at the graduation. Mm-hmm. The joy in the parents' faces, seeing what's going on. Yeah, and the joy in the teachers. That's the thing that always I always remark about is because I was there as a photographer and I was trying to get some photographs of the teachers and stuff like that. And when they're clapping for the students, it does seem very genuine. Like it's just a very genuine experience.
It is.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, that genuineness either extends from or extends to the bishop in his delivery of the diplomas. So I have the best seat in the house for that because I literally stand right next to the bishop and hand him the diplomas before every graduate comes up, and he has something to say to each one of them. Congratulations, you did it. This is for you. And it's so genuine. And he's used hundreds of kids, across 4 or 5 days, and they all get that personal greeting from the bishop, and they're all smiles.
Yes.
I think it kind of takes them aback a little bit, to have that smile from him, And I know he's so invested in all of them, and it's a celebration, for him. He means every word of those homilies, and to be able to greet them individually with that, I know that's very important to him. And it's just great to see the smiles on the kids when they come up.
That's awesome. When you're talking about the flavor of the schools and how each graduation has the same kind of format, but at the same time they have a different flavor. If you were going to tell our listeners, what was the flavor of each 5? Can you describe a little bit? Just a little bit of all.
I don't know if I'll have an actual flavor. This was sort of coconut. No. Well, let's do them in order, and I'll the order in which they occurred, right? So,
sure.
Wildwood Catholic is I think of the word family. Obviously every Catholic school is a family, but I think of the word family because theirs is done in St. Anne's Church in Wildwood, and because of the size of the class, there really aren't any limits to the number of people who can come. They get in the church. You have brothers, sisters, mom, dad, aunts, uncles. There's just lots of people who are like extended family, so to speak, of the graduates, and they do this cool thing there at the end of the ceremony where the senior class sort of hands off the flags. It's the papal flag and the school flag and the American flag to the junior class. And so there's this handoff to the next class, and you can think of that going back, decades, as long as the school's been there.
I can't imagine the faces of the juniors when they receive that.
Yeah, it's they take it very seriously too. It's really kind of neat to see. Let's see, where did we go next? We went to Gloucester Catholic next. Of course, Gloucester Catholic. I was told when I got to when I first started here about 9 years ago, when somebody was explaining the schools to me, and they said, every Catholic school is a family, but ain't no family like a Gloucester family. And
that is
so
right.
I'll just leave it at that. So they sort of have that same feeling, right? So the size of their class plus the size of this huge church, St. Agnes, in which they do the graduation and the baccalaureate mass are conducive to lots and lots of people coming, So you have extended family, you have friends. And the Gloucester Catholic is one of the bagpipe
Naturally,
and if you've ever been in that church, they do this for the Blue Mass too, in that same church where the bagpipes just resonate all throughout, and they have a really touching induction into the Alumni Association at Gloucester Catholic, where they take their Alumni Association there, very seriously, and that and so they have a very kind of toward the end, kind of a touching induction there.
That's nice. I like that. As an alumnus of Gloucester Catholic, I can attest that when it's one of the most unique places I've ever been to. It's genuinely, when they say family, they're not kidding about family. They mean family like brothers and sisters you fight with, but you're the only one that's allowed to fight with them. Everyone else is the enemy after that. It's yeah, that's exactly how it felt like. And I mean, and those legacies go on for generations because it's a fairly small school specific to Gloucester City and Belmar and that general vicinity. I was kind of an outsider there because I came up from Clayton because my mom worked there. But that no place I've ever been to in my life is, and it's hard scrabble. It's a little bit urban in the sense that Gloucester City is, a city, is a port city. So but it's also, I also happen to know, though he may never say it in public, I think Bishop Sullivan has a soft spot for there. Not just because it's so Irish, but and they're not the Irish. That's Camden Catholic,
right? So we left. So Gloucester Catholic and Paul VI had their graduation in the same day.
That was a crazy schedule for you guys.
Yeah, so there's a couple hours there. Like I stopped and got like a bagel and a cup of coffee and went to the next graduation. So, anyhow, so Paul VI is they've done their graduation outdoors, which is characterized when it's outside. It's beautiful. It's bright sunlight, right? It's sunset, that kind of thing. But this year is rainstorm, as you mentioned. So we were in the auditorium, which is also the way they set it up. You can't have as many people in the auditorium as you can outside. So the overflow goes into the gym. So the rest of the people who would have had tickets outside. So the graduates in the beginning, they go through the gym, and then they come all the way up and they go into the auditorium. And it's kind of neat because when they're in the gym, it's much less formal. You know, there's like high fives and that sort of thing. But when you're walking in formally into the auditorium, like there's no high fives and that kind of thing. Anyhow, so one of the things that really stands out about the Paul VI graduation for me is they have about half. So there's the baccalaureate mass, and then there's the graduation. About halfway through the graduation ceremony, the choir sings "Like an Eagle," and of course, Paul VI is the Eagles, and and it's "Like an eagle, I will fly," and it's just so like I've heard it, every year that I've been to graduation there. But and I'm sure they do it at other times at the school, but for the parents and the graduates, and of course at that point I'm sitting on the stage watching this, and there's, I'm not going to say there's not a dry eye in the place, but there's lots of tears, there's lots of, and
would you cry, Mike?
No, I don't cry, but I can confirm what he's saying, because it's of all the graduations I've ever photographed and attended, that is the first time I've ever seen the students actually sort of bond together. It wasn't the entire group, but it was like an entire section, arms around each other, just swaying back and forth while they're singing this song. It was beautiful.
Yeah, so that's a really touching component that's different there, Yeah. So then the next night we were at Camden Catholic, another bagpiping school.
Naturally.
So at Camden Catholic, one of the things that it's I don't know, maybe this says more about me than anything else, that the music stands out to me. But one of the things about the baccalaureate mass at Camden Catholic was they just had such beautiful cantors. So you have a singer, and normally you have like one or two, they just kept sending singer after singer after singer, and they were all different, and they all just had a better voice than the last.
It was amazing.
And every year it's like that. I mean, their music program and the students there and how hard they work at that.
I still hear those voices. I'm like, oh my goodness, how great these students are.
And Bishop Sullivan even commented on that, at how I think it was St. Augustine who said to sing is to pray twice, and thanked them for helping us to pray twice.
Yeah. He even go for what was it, like a little duet, like we should sing together sometime.
And so and they do the same thing with they're in the gym for their baccalaureate graduation, and so they're the extra tickets, the people that are in the auditorium, and so the graduates go through there first, and they end up outdoors. One of the neat things that they do, they have this photograph around this. There's like right out in front of the school, kind of around the flagpole, I guess there, and they all throw their hats up, and there's a photo of that you probably could find it on Facebook.
It's a tradition.
I know last year I took it. This year I'm pretty sure one of us took it.
Yeah, Dave Fernandez was there taking the picture.
And they've been doing that for, who knows, decades. And that's another cool piece of that.
I will admit that I'm a little bitter. In no graduation I ever participated in was there ever a cap throw. Not in grade school, not in high school, not in college, not when I did my master's program. And I'll be honest with you, I'm still a little bitter about it.
I threw mine.
Did you? Good.
I did.
Well, Gloucester Catholic doesn't even have caps.
They don't?
I think I realized that.
Yeah, no, they don't have. And somebody asked about, are they going to throw the caps or something? And the principal there, just said, no, we just don't even have caps.
That's one way to keep that from happening.
Wow.
One way to.
That also made
is that okay for graduation? Don't you have to have a cap?
I don't think you have to. But yeah, most do.
Now you're gonna make me read all about it.
Actually, you're gonna make me go back and look at if I had a cap in 1990 when I graduated. Have to look.
It's fascinating when you start reading about like academic regalia. Like you could go down a rabbit hole fast. We could do a whole podcast on that.
I don't know. I've now worked with 2 superintendents of schools, and all I requested once from any of them was to be allowed to walk in the procession, and it still hasn't happened yet. But that's all right. I've seen other staff members here who are not me, and I got the master's gown still sitting in my closet.
It has little things hanging. So it's kind of like we make a big conversation about how interesting it is to see everybody walking in their academic attires for graduation.
I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's fun.
Bill has a cool one.
Bill does have the coolest. That's the benefit of actually spending all those extra years and money and time getting your doctorate. You look coolest at the graduation ceremony.
You get a few extra stripes and a cool hat.
That's right.
Well, cool to me. I'm not sure if it's cool to anybody else. But
no, yours the other. You got more than 4 corners. Yours is even cooler.
But Bishop wins.
Well,
Absolutely.
Bishop, Bishop has a great regalia. And, I didn't realize it. I know we haven't talked about all the schools yet, but I was looking at some of the other dioceses. Not all of the bishops wear his academic attire. It was a whole bunch of other bishops just showed up in their usual bishop gear, but he actually rolls in his tartan hood, and he looks... That's a good-looking outfit.
And a crimson cape, really.
Yeah.
And they're...
Bishops should copy that, fashion statement from our bishop. And, it's kind of like, this is the moment to wear it.
Yeah. He looks like
right?
Bishop looks like a superhero when he walks in. He really does. It kind of flows nicely. It's like, oh, wow.
It makes the kids kind of like be like, wow, look at that,
I will admit that because I'm a nerd like this, I look at all the teachers to see what their hoods look like and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, that one's good. Oh, I want that one. Ooh.
Yeah.
I should have gotten that degree. That's even cooler. Anyway. So one last high school, though.
Yeah, Holy Spirit. The biggest thing I'll say about Holy Spirit is it's bright. That's the flavor there. The last 2 years they've done it in St. Joseph's Church in Sea Isle again, so you can have as many family and friends as you like, and that's just such a beautiful setting. And the music is so uplifting. There I go again with the music, but they're great. I mean, the arts programs at these schools are just spectacular. And of course, Holy Spirit ends up on the beach, and that's just such a great ending. And it's the last one we do. Mm-hmm. So the very last procession I'm a part of goes out the back of the church, and you walk a block and a half to the beach. And that's kind of a nice setting to kind of say, all right, the graduation season is over.
It really is nice. It's photographically, it's difficult because there are a bunch of sunbathers on the beach too, so you have to be careful where your camera's pointed. But it is Marianela. Next year, if you get the opportunity, you should attend.
I'll ask my boss.
It is an experience.
You have to bring your robes.
That's right. I could bring mine, but nobody invites me to participate. It's all right. I'm not bitter, Bill.
Let's see what happens this year. We don't know.
Well, you know what the tricky part?
You should be on a board or something.
I was going to say, I don't get nominated to that either. I'm wondering if it would be weird if I shot. I could do that. I go to these things. Why don't I just wear my stuff and take pictures that way?
And then I take a picture
I'm telling
of
you, next year I'm coming in my academic gear. That's how I'm going to do it. There you go.
Oh, that's so funny.
There you go. Oh, goodness. It was a great graduation. Those are the high schools were last week, and I think next week are the elementary schools, right?
Right.
25 elementary schools,
and they'll all have mass. In most cases, celebrated by the pastor, and then they do their sort of conferral of their degrees, so to speak, or their diplomas from the school during right at the end of mass.
Your son's graduating next year or next week, right?
No, next year.
Next year?
Yeah, we have. I do have 2 kindergarten graduates though.
Well,
and every school will do a kindergarten graduation too.
I'm going to one.
Moving up to first grade. So, yeah.
Goodness, Bill, I was kind of like wondering, you've heard so many of the speeches in our high schools as you went through the graduation season this year. What kind of like strikes you? What makes you feel like really good about like the students that we're serving and how well they're doing and how prepared they are for the future and things they're kind of like, looking forward to do as they move forward?
There are 2 things that stood out across all of the speeches to me at the schools and, this year. The first is the emphasis that each one of the speakers put on the togetherness of the class, on how much they relied on each other and went through challenging and the bad times and good times together, how they leaned on each other, how they came together as a group. And that was true from the smallest high school to the largest. And that really stood out to me. And I think it's a testament to the efforts that the schools make to build that camaraderie, to build a true community. These are not just kids who happen to go to school together, and they don't leave the development of community to chance. And that's related to the second thing that really stood out to me, which was, in a word, Jesus. Mm-hmm. Every one of the schools, the speakers spoke about developing relationship with Jesus. So, which is heartwarming, and I to me as the superintendent, but I know to the school leadership, and I know it's not planted because I asked every one of the principals of the schools, did they write that? Did anybody push them? They say, no, that's all them. Mm-hmm. I mean, they edit a few things here and there, like for style or whatever, but that message about growing in relationship with Jesus was present at every one of the schools. And that is, I mean, that's the point of Catholic schools, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the point of Catholic schools, and people ask me that sometimes, is to lead people to Christ. And so if your graduates are speaking to their peers, talking about how together they were and how they grew towards and with Jesus, I mean, I think that really says something. That's a testament again to the willingness of these young people to embrace that message, because that's not a given, and the efforts that the leadership of the school and the directors of Catholic Identity and the campus ministry and the religion faculty and the whole faculty and the staff, that they all make towards like that singular focus. Those things really stood out to me and were very gratifying. And that's, again, you ask, that's part of what makes it so exciting to go to all of these graduations, is to hear the voice of the students about their own educational experience.
It's a confirmation of our mission. Like, it's kind of like just confirming that this is why we do what we do, and just seeing the kids speaking that language, it's kind of like the best feelings ever. So
yeah, it is.
I agree with you. And I also think that the kids just look so confident, like when they're leaving our schools, like just look like so prepared that sometimes it even wants me, like I want to go back to high school. I want to have that experience too again. I'm like, wow, what an amazing education we are providing. I think that really stood out with me.
Well, there's some security too when they leave. I mean, it's across the board. By the time you average them all together, it's like 95% of the students who graduate from our high schools are going on to further their education.
Exactly.
They're going to go to most of them to a 4-year college, many of them to a 2-year college. Many of our high schools have relationships with community colleges whereby the kids are already sort of halfway to an associate's degree by the time they graduate. So that makes a lot of sense economically and academically.
Correct.
But there's a sense of security. They know where they're going, and they know that they have a good foundation to get there, because it's not every high school graduate, in the surrounding area that goes on to further their education. That's one of the benefits of being in an environment where that's an expectation and where you're prepared to do it. And so I think maybe some of that confidence comes from they know what's next. They know that they're going to move on and further their education, in the next step.
Yeah, the majority of our high schoolers just seems to be like really high there, and kind of like just that confidence that they're able to build across the years that they spend in our Catholic schools.
Yeah, well, but that actually sort of transitions nicely into something else I wanted to talk about. I kind of alluded to it at the very beginning, which was the state of our schools. So, we have many schools within the South Jersey, some independent, some and many diocesan, some parish. I'm curious, in general, not calling out any schools specifically, but in general, how are our schools doing?
I'd say our schools are vibrant.
That is a good answer.
Catholic strong.
They're Catholic strong. It's a true answer. They're all, they're all so. And again, I'm going to use this analogy, but I don't mean it in a paternal sort of way. But it's a good analogy as a parent. If you have multiple kids, they grow up in the same household, but they can be so different.
Yeah.
I grew up in a family of. I'm one of 6, and so that you definitely can tell that we're all from the same family, but we're all so different in the way that we approach things and the way our styles, how we look, all this. And I think our schools are similar, so they're all Catholic schools, but their identity is so unique to the specific communities that they serve. But I would say that across the board, they're vibrant. They're academically strong. Many very unique things happening in individual schools or clusters of schools. Their enrollment this year was up from last year. What we saw over the COVID years, I mean, many families, I think we've talked about this in the past, many parents saw what Catholic schools were doing in remaining open and keeping open physically for kids to come into school, and keeping kids safe and healthy, and managing things when they came up, managing, COVID cases, to be very specific. And they liked that, and they sent their kids to school. And then the next year, we saw that so many of those families kept their kids in Catholic. They were sort of sold after that first year. So this year we're
taste and see.
Yeah, right. Taste and see.
There you go.
Oh, I like that. I'll have to tell our marketing people about that.
There you go.
But I think, and so this year, we're back in re-registration and registration season. So Marianela actually keeps extremely close tabs on all of the schools and where they are. And I had one school. I mean, she's such a great support for the advancement directors who are doing most of the enrollment, and she knows this stuff. So I was looking at one school, and I look at the budgets along with the finance office to sort of identify concerns or any of that kind of stuff. And there was one school that, their enrollment is not yet where it is this year, this particular school. And I went to Marianela and I said, how worried should we be? Because they're projecting, and it's like, I don't know, it's like 10 or 12 kids or something. And they're projecting, 10 or 12 more than they have now. And that's a lot, in terms of managing the resources of the school. And Marianela, from her knowledge of last year's enrollment, of knowledge of that particular school, she'd been on the phone with that advancement director like the day before. She knows exactly how many people have not yet re-registered, and she knows that the advancement director knows that they just haven't gotten around to it yet. And these advancement directors at the schools have really, really close relationships with the families, so they understand the people who haven't gotten around to it and the people who aren't coming back. Yeah. But this particular school also had, I want to say like 12.5 inquiries and tours that they were doing. So Marianela was able to confidently say to me, no, they're going to be fine, based on her understanding of that and where they are in the process, which is such an asset when we're thinking about resources of schools, supporting principals, where we need to help, because there are some schools that do need help with their enrollment plans, and so we can target our assistance there because we have such good information about the schools. But I would say, in terms of enrollment specifically, I think the schools are very much on top of that process, and it's driven by every person involved believes so deeply in what we're doing, believes in that message of helping kids get closer to Jesus. They also believe in a really, really strong academic education, which we also offer. So everybody's all in. So the principals pay attention to this, the advancement directors, and they have really good systems in place for making sure that as many parents who want their kids to have a Catholic education actually do.
Mm. And, I would add to that also, in addition to the most important thing that we do, which is getting kids closer to Jesus and making sure that they're strong, academically, we also want to make sure that people have a good experience when it comes to our schools. So, think about all the work involved in making sure the academics and, that relationship with Jesus go well. We also try to make sure that the kids and the families have a great experience in the school. And that comes with the events that you see, how we encourage families to participate in our schools and be part of the life and culture of the schools. So that really make us and set us apart.
Yeah, I agree. The that connection, which was one of the things that I think we've noticed even more this year because we lost it for the previous 2 years. Some of the extracurricular activity that wasn't present because we couldn't be together. I really do think that this year, I know in my son's grade school where he's graduating week from today. The fact that they were able to do more school-wide activities this year really, I think even he's a teenager and, as most teenagers are, they are standoffish to things. He actually was really looking forward to taking part in some things or having their school dance. By the time it comes out, it'll have been last Thursday. This podcast comes out, it'll be last Thursday. But, he's very excited about it.
It is amazing.
Yeah, most of the schools all of the schools have gotten back most of what they kind of pared back during COVID, and so we're in a really interesting place with that in terms of how are the schools doing, right? So you may remember back in March that the mask mandate was lifted for New Jersey schools. That was a really big milestone, and we didn't know how that was going to go in terms of the spread of COVID. And as you might expect, when the COVID numbers in the community were low, the COVID numbers in the school were low. And when the COVID numbers got higher in the community, then the COVID numbers in the schools got a little bit higher. But I think what we've seen in terms of the public health guidance for the schools is that it has relaxed a bit, where if you have COVID, you can come back to school a little sooner. There are only certain conditions under which you need to quarantine. And so I think what we're seeing right now in the schools is a little bit of a dry run for next year, in terms of where the COVID numbers are in the community, and the schools kind of proceeding as normal and managing the COVID cases when they come up. So we're in a different place than we were 2 years ago, when there far fewer people had COVID and had any kind of immunity from it. There were no vaccinations, right? So you didn't have anybody vaccinated, whereas now you have many people vaccinated. And the evolution of the virus itself has, as I understand it, been evolving towards more contagious but less serious, so to speak, which is the general pathway scientifically that, as I understand it, the viruses take. So we're getting to a place where we're managing it. And so there's not remote learning anymore for kids who are home sick. They just get their stuff like they would if they were absent with the flu. Yeah. And so that's not to diminish the seriousness of, that could still kind of happen. But I think I'm grateful for these couple of months as a pathway, towards next year, continuing that sense of normalcy, if you will, continuing that sense of all those community events that and that kind of togetherness that really make the Catholic school, shine. Yeah. In a way that I think other schools don't. And I've said this before. I truly think that the Catholic schools are able to shine in that way because of our recognition of the presence of Jesus. God is everywhere. He's everywhere. But in Catholic schools, you can recognize it and invite it and accept him, and I think that makes just such a difference. It just elevates everything. So I'm hopeful that next year we'll be able to continue to have everything back, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a as someone like yourself and like Marianela with kids in school, that was certainly something that, I think we all struggled with for quite some time. And I, for one, was happy to see how quickly everyone gravitated back towards a sense of normalcy, we'll call it. In terms of you sort of alluded to this earlier, but one of the parts of your job is making sure that that each of our schools are fiscally sound, financially sound, are having, that the administrations are caring for them well. That's no small deal. I mean, that's something that I know you and the accounting department work through every year. And I was having my conversations with some of the higher ups in the diocese, and they were quite thrilled to see that, from a financial standpoint and from a planning standpoint, the schools are doing a great job this year. It was makes me happy.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it makes it. Yeah. Imagine how it makes us feel.
Bill,
I know.
Bill loves to look at that data. He takes it seriously, and he also has fun with it, which is great.
Wow,
I do. I love it. I never met a spreadsheet
I'm like,
I didn't like.
Bill, here it is, and he's like, making graphs of it, and doing a good job on that.
But it's true. It's a team effort, right? Mm-hmm. So part of the financial sustainability of a Catholic school is enrollment. I mean, that's kind of the lifeblood, right? It's mission, but it's also from a financial standpoint very important. And so Marianela is so close to the ground on that we can get very, very accurate reads on not only where the schools are, but where we really realistically expect them to be. The Office of Finance just does an outstanding job in scouring the budgets and identifying, if you work in finance, you don't have to be mission oriented. I mean, you can be just numbers oriented.
Sure.
But Laura Montgomery and Tammy Wallace, who are the two people that we work with in finance, are on mission. I mean, and care so much about the schools, and it's just so great to work with both of them because they get it, and they get how important this stuff is. That every time that you talk about a budget or a category, you're talking about people, and you're talking every time you talk about enrollment, you're talking about people, and so they get that, and that's a pleasure, and we also there's. Bobby Lockwood, who is the director of curriculum and assessment, but also shares my love of spreadsheets and happens to be a former high school administrator, is so good at helping kind of look at high school budgets and helping the high schools to understand, places where they can improve. Mm-hmm. So we try not to, I tell Bobby that I try to protect his time because he's got his hands full with curriculum, instruction, and assessment, for 29 schools. Or 30 schools, but he's such an asset to that as well. So it's really a team effort that goes into that, and I think we've got, great people in place to really help the schools sustain themselves.
And that's something that I think our schools maybe don't get enough credit for, is the level of professionalism. Certainly out of the administrators. Obviously, our teachers are great teachers. They're certified and everything like that. But you can have. It's possible to have a bad administrator here and there. And I will say that across the board, our school administrators are genuinely top notch, and they see the bigger picture, which I think stems from the school's office and the bishop and stuff like that. That there are people out here looking at the bigger picture when it comes to what we are, but never forgetting, to your point, to stay on mission. I know I happen to be one of those people who would be like the accountants, who would be all bottom line and going, sorry, no, we're going to kill that because, but it's bringing nourishment to our children. I'd be no. And having that ability out of your professionals to understand the need for something like that goes a long way.
Yeah, I think, we are at a place of growth, as the Office of Catholic Schools. I think we are trying to bring growth to our schools in every way possible. So when it comes to academics, when it comes to enrollment, marketing, every aspect of the school, even now having Lee in the Office of Catholic Schools, are also providing that Catholic identity knowledge and how to push that forward in our schools. It's a moment of growth, and I think we just want to continue to do the best practices and encourage our schools to do that and support in that effort. It's kind of that's how we see ourselves, as a support system, more than we see ourselves as the guys that come and try to just tell you what to do. We want to grow together, and we want to do it with you.
Yeah, and there's a history of that here. One of our schools just celebrated, the 100th year of Catholic education in the city of Island, right?
Yeah, Bishop Shad.
Bishop Shad School. You used to be Sacred Heart and St. Francis, and merged several years ago into Bishop Shad. And I always enjoyed stopping by that school. Actually, that is a school that's a hallmark of evolution, but remaining true to the nature of our Catholic Church. It's wonderful because it has the nicest and smallest women religious that I've ever been to. They are across the board. They are the tiniest sisters I've ever seen. But they know they're tiny. But they are so devout, and they bring such a great presence there. The pastor there, Father Junior Flores, he has energy. That man has energy. He is a sun worth of energy in him. And I can tell that the kids really appreciate it. But that's an example of a school that's very multicultural right now, very diverse, and making it work all the way around. It's a shining example. I like the fact that not just because I have family ties to the city of Vineland and that school system, but it makes me very happy to see that school.
That's kind of like one of the schools that I, just think very closely about, especially because when I started here, that was my first kind of like a Latino Enrollment Initiative school. And just seeing how, demographically it's changed over the years and see that growth is amazing, like how the Latino population is growing in that area and how it's reflected into the school and many of our schools across the diocese. It is kind of like something neat to watch and be part of.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is that has attracted people to Bishop Shad and other schools, I would say this across the board, and Bishop mentioned this in his homily at the graduations, is that Catholic schools, since their inception, have focused on the mind, the body, and the soul. And the Catholic faith sees the unity of these things. And he made the point that other kinds of schools really just focus on the mind. They can't focus on the soul. And that is so important, I think, because I think there's something about when you think about education in its purest form, it isn't about only increasing in knowledge or even increasing in, creativity or, anything that sort of is the mind. It is all those things, of course, but it's the soul. Who are you and what are you supposed to do? And
follow your purpose. What's your mission?
Right. And there's something... we talk about Catholic schools being, in some ways, traditional. And I think and they are, in the sense that the tradition is the education of the mind and the body and the soul, and a truly, a Catholic perspective on those things. And, I always sort of shy away from using the term traditional because I'm afraid that people will see it as... every kid sitting in a straight row, only the teacher talking, and nobody steps out of line, and that kind of thing. Now, certainly we have classrooms like that, but I think that's something that Marianela said about, best practice, So our teachers and our principals are always striving to learn more about the science of reading, for example, or how to teach fractions, or, all of these, historical thinking and how do you change what a history class looks like. They're constantly thinking about this stuff, constantly exhausting themselves, trying to look up resources to inspire and motivate and teach their students. And I think what motivates that is the tradition of Catholic education, caring about the students. The techniques, so to speak, are not traditional per se, but the motivation to find a way to help the school subjects be relevant in the context of the faith and to witness to the faith and to help kids grow their soul, not only in religion, not only when they go to Mass, but through all of the subjects. Yeah. That's not easy work. But to me, that's where, I think of our schools as being traditional in that sense, as carrying on that tradition of educating the mind and the body and the soul, and doing so with fidelity to the faith. And that, I think, sets us apart.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Across the board, actually. It's I think you make a great point, though. It's yes, we are traditional, but we're not necessarily restrictive. It's yes, that's we are. I mean, there's the conservative nature of our faith, but not necessarily the conservative nature in how to teach something. I'm amazed at how great the STEM labs are in our schools. And even when I was in school, I remember, my teachers were avant-garde, might not be the right word to use, but it was never how what my father's experience was. It wasn't, to your point, straight lines, everybody in a row, nuns whacking you over the knuckles with a ruler. I've never been hit by a nun with a ruler.
Me neither.
But they found other ways of torturing me, but never with a ruler. But it's at the same time, we're Catholic schools. We have a Catholic faith. There's a Catholic nature to it, and therefore, we are all about helping our students find how to live their Catholic faith in a very secularized world, and understanding what these Catholic truths are and how they can work in concert with what we're seeing surround us, and let's face it, going back to some of the violence we've seen lately, how they can buoy us in times of distress.
I mean, what an amazing thing is to have kids just be able to talk about God in any way they're learning, I had my daughter telling my son last night, did you know that God knew your name before my mother put your name to you? And he was just asking me about how, we came about his name, and she was kind of like making that connection.
Did he mention that God is omniscient? Because if he used the word omniscient, I'm going to be really impressed.
Not yet.
Okay.
But she said everywhere.
Yeah, well, she got the concept. There you go.
The concept, yes.
And that's not an easy concept to understand. There are people our age who can't quite figure that out. So
yeah.
But that's the nature of our schools.
But, our kids are able to talk about God in, all the little ways that our teachers creatively put it out there. So having that conversation, I think, is huge in this world where, God is prohibited many places,
You know what's funny about that? Did you mention that? So last week we had Father Hughes on to talk about the Eucharist and the Eucharistic revival and the mystery of the Eucharist in many ways. There are adults who, the reason we're doing this Eucharistic revival is because there are so many adults who don't understand what the nature of the Eucharist is. And we realized kind of early on that the teaching model we probably need to use is what happens in our second grades when kids are introduced to the concept of the Eucharist and the sacrament, going to communion and things like that and everything that surrounds it. And Bill's been on a couple of committee meetings with me discussing it, and I genuinely believe that even teaching adults what second graders are getting when they're learning about the Eucharist might be the best way to explain it, because sometimes you need to be things need to be explained to you in very basic ways, particularly when there's such powerful mystery behind it.
That definitely. I think, just the fact that our second graders are so well prepared for communion, that's when they, if you go to a Catholic school, just in case you didn't know, dear listeners, your kids are getting prepared for the sacraments as they go to school. And, we take that very seriously. We, develop curriculum about that. And it's kind of like, it's not a graduation. It's the essence of who we are. It's kind of like, the Eucharist is Jesus, and we are all about Jesus. So by the time they're in second grade, imagine that they're ready to go and kind of like ready to receive Jesus, in the Eucharist.
And those sacraments are a common thread across every year. I think at this time of year, it's, a lot of people get nostalgic. They've never going to be in third grade again. I'm never going to be at this school again. I'm never going to have that teacher again or whatever. But one thing that I think is a comfort in Catholic school is the presence of the sacraments. And every year, every student goes to Mass at least 10 times, once a month, together with the community. And, to say nothing of when they go to Mass, on Sundays with their family. Every student in the context of school over second grade and above goes to the Sacrament of Reconciliation at least twice. So the sacraments, that encounter with Jesus, is like, it's such a constant across all the years. No matter what grade you're in, no matter how long you've been at a school, you're going to experience the sacraments, and that's just such a comforting, constant thread that is the backbone, really, of the experience in K-8 or K-12 at a Catholic school.
Marianela, if people want to find out more about Catholic schools in South Jersey, where would they go?
They can go to southjerseycatholicschools.org, and we have a website that actually has all of our schools listed there. You can find out more about each of the individual schools in your area. And if you just want to have a conversation to see, what I could recommend, depending on your distance, where you work, come on, call me out. I am available at 856-583-6108, and I'm happy to have a conversation to give you the best recommendation of where you can send your child to a Catholic school of your like. And, as Bill mentioned at the beginning, they all have a different taste and different flavor. So we encourage families to tour around the schools that are around them just to see where they fit better.
Yep. Bill, any last thoughts we shut down?
I just appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk about schools. I could do it every week.
Well, careful. I got some dead weeks in the summer. You might be coming back.
The one thing I just want to say in closing is part of what makes it such a pleasure to work in Catholic schools is the people, the principals, the teachers, the staff at the schools. There's not a more hardworking or dedicated group in the world, and I just want to make sure that I said that here as the last word, because that's their hearts are in it. They make it work.
I concur completely. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you again next week. See you, everybody.